October 28th, 2014, from Kauffman Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri. It was Game 6 of the World Series between the San Francisco Giants and the Kansas City Royals. And on the mound for Kansas City was Yordano Ventura, and on the mound for San Francisco was Peavy. So in the top of the first, Gregor Blanco would be the leadoff hitter, as always, and he struck out, so Ventura got a leadoff strikeout, and then he set down Panic and Posey, so he set down the Giants in order in the top of the first, and we headed to the bottom of the first. Peavy would get Escobar to pop out, and then he struck out Aoki, then he walked Cain, and then Hosmer got a single, so he had runners on the corners for Billy Butler, but he grounded out, and the first came to a close, and we were still knotted up at goose eggs. So now we headed to the top of the second. Ventura would get Sandoval to pop out, but then Hunter Pence got a double, but then Ventura struck out Brandon Belt, and then got Michael Morse to pop out, and so now we headed to the bottom of the second, and things got blown wide open right here. Alex Gordon led off with a single, and then Salvador Perez got a single, so he had runners on the corners with no outs. Mike Moustakas came to the plate, and he hit a double. That brought Alex Gordon across home, and it was now 1-0 Kansas City over San Francisco. Omar Infante then struck out, and then Escobar ended up getting a single. There was some confusion on the play for the Giants defense, and everybody ended up safe. Salvador Perez was acting like he was going to come home, but he didn't, and so Escobar was able to get on first. So now Aoki came to the plate. He hit a single. That brought Perez home, and it was now 2-0 Royals over the Giants. So now Peavy was pulled from the game, and they brought in Petit to pitch. So now Petit faced Lorenzo Cain, and Lorenzo Cain got a single. That brought in Moustakas and Escobar, and it was now 4-0 Royals over the Giants. So now with Eric Hosmer at the plate, Petit would throw a wild pitch. It bounced before home. It kind of hit off of Posey's knee. Posey's looking around. Where's the ball? It's right between his legs. Lorenzo Cain takes second base. And so now Hosmer's still up at the plate. He gets a double. That brings in Aoki and Cain, and it's now 6-0 Royals over the Giants. So now Billy Butler comes up, and he gets a double. It's back-to-back doubles. Eric Hosmer comes in to score, and it's now 7-0. Gordon then grounded out, and Perez popped out, and the second would come to a close, but not after. The Royals put 7 runs on the scoreboard. So after 2, it was 7-0 Kansas City over San Francisco. So now we head to the top of the third. Ventura would strike out Ishikawa. He then walked Crawford, walked Blanco, and walked Panic. So now the bases were juiced with just 1 out for Buster Posey, and Posey grounded into a double play. So now we headed to the bottom of the third. Machi was now in the game pitching for San Francisco as he relieved Petit, and Moustakas would ground out, and then Omar Infante reached on a ground rule double. It popped over the left field fence, and so now Infante was on second base. Escobar then grounded out, and Aoki walked, so it was 2 on, 2 out for Lorenzo Cain, and Lorenzo Cain got the ending second ground rule double, and that would bring in Omar Infante, and it was now 8-0 Kansas City over San Francisco. Hosmer would ground out, and the third came to a close, but not after the Royals had added 1 run to their lead, and it was now 8-0 KC over San Fran. So now in the top of the fourth, Ventura would get Sandoval to ground out, and he got Pence to ground out. Bell ended up reaching base on an infield single, but then Morse would ground out, and so we headed to the bottom of the fourth. Machi still on the mound for the Giants. He would end up getting Butler to pop out, and Gordon struck out. Perez ended up reaching on an infield single, but then Moustakas popped out, and the fourth came to a close. So after 4, it was still 8-0 Royals over Giants. So now in the top of the fifth, Ventura would set down the Giants in order. He actually struck out Ishikawa to lead off the inning, and then got Crawford and Blanco to ground out. So now we headed to the bottom of the fifth. Machi's still on the mound. Omar Infante gets a single. Now Escobar's at the plate. He gets a double. Infante comes around to score. It's now 9-0 Royals over the Giants. Aoki would then ground out, and then Cain grounded out, and then Hosmer would strike out, and the inning came to a close, but not after the Royals added another insurance run, and they now had a 9-0 lead over the Giants. So now in the top of the sixth, Ventura would end up getting Panic to pop out, and then Posey to ground out. He walked Kung Fu Panda, Pablo Sandoval, and then Pence grounded out. And so we headed to the bottom of the 6th. Hunter Strickland was now on the mound for San Francisco as he had relieved Machi. He walked the first batter he saw, Billy Butler, but then Alex Gordon grounded into a double play, and then Salvador Perez grounded out. And so the 6th inning came to a close, and it was still 9-0 Kansas City over San Francisco. Now in the top of the 7th, Ventura still on the mound. He got Belt to pop out, and he got Morse to ground out. Then he walked Ishikawa, and then Brandon Crawford got a single. So now we had 2 on, 2 out for Gregor Blanco, and he popped out. So now we headed to the bottom of the 7th. Hunter Strickland still on the mound for the Giants, and the leadoff hitter, Mike Moustakas, took him deep, and it was now 10-0 with the solo shot to lead off the bottom of the 7th. So now Omar Infante would end up popping out, and so would Escobar. Dyson would ground out. So Strickland, after letting up the leadoff homer to Moustakas, would retire the next 3 batters, and the 7th inning came to a close, but not after the Royals had added yet another run, and they now led 10-0 over the Giants. So now in the top of the 8th, Jason Frasor was brought in to relieve Ventura as his night was done after pitching 7 shutout innings, and Frasor ended up letting up a leadoff single to Joe Panic, the first batter he saw, to lead off the top of the 8th. Sussick, who had come in earlier in the game as a defensive substitute, he ended up popping out. Kung Fu Panda got a single, so now you had 2 on, and Pence ended up popping out. So now Brandon Belt came up, 2 on, 2 out, and he struck out. So now we headed to the bottom of the 8th. Ryan Vogelsong was actually in there for the Giants now, as he relieved Hunter Strickland. And so now the first batter he would see would be Lorenzo Cain. He walked him, but then he struck out Eric Hosmer, and then he got Billy Butler to ground into a double play. So after 8, it was still 10-0 Royals over the Giants. So now it's the top of the 9th, and the Giants had 3 outs left, or they would end up being shut out, and we would be forced into Game 7. And so then Michael Morse would end up popping out, and then Juan Perez would get a single. So now 1 on, 1 out for Duffy. Duffy struck out, and Collins is on the mound, by the way, for the Royals. And now it's Collins versus Blanco, and Gregor Blanco strikes out as Collins gets 2 strikeouts to bring this game to a close, and the Royals complete the shutout, and they win 10-0. So the final score, Kansas City 10, San Francisco 0. This series is now tied up at 3 games apiece, and we will see a Game 7. So quite the impressive game after seeing the shutout by Mad Bum as he pitched a full complete game in Game 5. Now the Royals combined for the shutout. Ventura pitched 7 innings. He gets the win. He allowed no earned runs, obviously. He only allowed 3 hits. He did have 5 walks, which was 1 more walk than he had strikeouts. He had 4 strikeouts. Frasor and Collins both came in. They both pitched an inning of relief. They both did not allow any earned runs. Frasor let up 2 hits. Collins let up 1 hit. Frasor had 1 strikeout. Collins had 2 strikeouts. So those 3 pitchers combined for the biggest shutout since back in '85, when in Game 7 of the World Series, the Royals shut out the Cardinals 11-0. But this shutout forces a Game 7. The loss goes to Peavy. He only lasted 1 1/3 innings, so he only got 4 outs in this game. He let up 5 earned runs and 6 hits, 1 base on balls, and 2 strikeouts. So Peavy actually, he ended up letting up more runs than he ended up retiring batters. And in this game for Kansas City, Escobar was 2 for 5. He had a run and an RBI. Aoki was 1 for 3 with a run and an RBI. He also walked, and he did strike out as well. Cain was 2 for 3, 3 RBIs, 2 walks. He also came across home. Eric Hosmer was 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs. He also struck out twice, but he came across the plate once. Butler was 1 for 4. Gordon was 1 for 4. Butler did have 1 RBI, and he did walk once. Perez was 2 for 4. He came across home once. Moustakas was 2 for 4. He had 2 RBIs, and he crossed the plate twice. And Infante was 2 for 4 and crossed the plate twice. And for the Royals, Moustakas, Hosmer, Butler, Infante, Cain, and Escobar all had doubles. And Moustakas had a home run, the game's only home run. And for the Giants, Hunter Pence was the only one who had an extra base hit. He had a double. And Hunter Pence in this game was 1 for 4. That was his only hit. The Giants did not get any runs. So the Royals win this one 10-0. And we will be seeing Game 7 tomorrow.